Namaste everyone, Jai Shri Ram and welcome back on my show with your host and your host RJ Megha Raja. I know you all have been eagerly waiting for my next upcoming videos, new guests, and what all we have to bring to you. As you are aware, we have been very excited with the upcoming new year, with the multiple changes that have been happening globally. Some good, some bad, some we feel a certain way, some we have our opinions. But I think just like Donald Trump in the US, he says it's a year of development. I think so does our Modi ji proudly says that Bharat is continuing and will continue to grow in many arenas very in along very similar lines. I think today's guest is definitely going to talk about those points, those topics, and education being one of those most important topics that we always target. Without any further ado, I will introduce you today's guest. His name is Pramod Kumarji. Yes, I do know a lot of people always have your heads or bells ringing that Pramodji is always or has been a guest here prior to this show. Yes, he has. You are absolutely right. We did a podcast together on the topic Hindu Renaissance, where he openly, fearlessly shared all his views and opinions about Sanatan Dharma, about Hindutva, about our basic activities at home, things that parents can teach their children, things that we as the youth of our nation need to learn and grow and continue to think about. I think he planted the seed beautifully in the other video. So if you are someone who's yet to watch that, it's called Hindu Renaissance Podcast. It's on my show, Satat Swadharma, and on my YouTube page. Coming back to today's topic, and a fast but a quick introduction about Pramodji. He's currently an assistant professor. Yes, he's definitely on the council as a consultant for NCERT, obviously our education system, and his impact to our education system. He's graduated from IIT, but without giving you every single detail, if you're somebody who passionately wants to know about that detail, read his bio under this video on my description. But his literature, his knowledge, his experience, and his wisdom is immense and wide. And I do not have the time to cover all of his knowledge here. So I've covered all that in my description. And without waiting any further on our time, he is here to tell us about how past, present, and where Bharat's future is about to go. Are you all excited? Well, I definitely am. So let's get Shri Pramodji on the show. Welcome, Pramodji. Jai Shri Ram. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Namaste, Meghaji, and best wishes to all your viewers.
Thank you, Pramodji. Okay, Pramodji, I know we have very limited time with you. So I will quickly start asking my questions and we can quickly start jumping right into our today's topic. We
Sure.
termed it as decolonizing Indian education or Indian history. What did we mean by that?
Okay, so to understand, as you said, the past, the present, and the future of Indian education, see, we have to look at what India's indigenous education system was
Hmm.
before the British. So, from the historical records that we have enough data to show that India had its own flourishing system of education right from the primary stage to world renowned universities like Nalanda, Takshashila. And across the country, there were functioning centers of higher learning in India. So, what happens during the British period is we all know that there was a collapse of this indigenous system, leading to India becoming from what it was one of the highest literate countries in the world. It went on to become, by the time we became independent in 1947, India became one of the most illiterate countries in the world. So this collapse was triggered by many people would have heard of what is called Macaulay's Minute, the 1835 Minute, where in a report to the British Parliament, he says explicitly that we Britishers are a handful of Britishers here in India, but we are governing over millions of Indians. And therefore, we need to create a class of interpreters who would be later on, come to be called in popular parlance as Brown Sahibs, who would be Indians in appearance, in blood, etc., but who would be anglicized in their intellect, in their taste, in their worldviews. And to that effect, he said our education system should focus on creating this class of interpreters. And the most important step towards that would be to introduce English as the medium of education, to start schools where English would be the medium of instruction. So, to promote these new schools with the English as the medium of instruction, right? They were taking away the sources of support, the ecosystem that had, for example, allowed these indigenous schools to flourish. So, in this pre-British era, in the early 18th century, there was a great scholar called Dharampalji, who was a disciple of Gandhiji, who brought out this data, compiled this data, and it was later on published as a book called The Beautiful Tree. So, this is a book that anybody who is interested in the history of Indian education should read. This term, the beautiful tree, is a term that Gandhiji used in his debate with a British parliamentarian called Philip Hartog, when Gandhiji said at the Second Roundtable Conference in London that you Britishers have uprooted the beautiful tree of Indian education. Philip Hartog challenged him and asked him to provide data, and there was a correspondence between them. Later on, Dharampalji kind of continued that debate by collecting data about the schools and the indigenous system that flourished in pre-British India. So,
Hmm.
particularly if you read that book, you come across the reports of four important British officers. One was William Adams, the second was Thomas Munro, the third was Prendergast, and the fourth is William Bentinck. So all these, the third is from the Punjab provinces, Leetna. There was an educationist called, director of public instruction called Leetna, who provides this data. So when you look at the data, it is an eye opener. It is quite astonishing to see this data that has been collected, where British officers, talking about the indigenous system, William Adams says there were about 100,000 schools in Bengal alone, Bengal and Bihar region alone, which means almost for every village there was a school there. And this is something that most of the Indians have never heard of. When I asked my students, what do you think about the education system that India had before the British, many of them would say that we had a very primitive kind of education and there were no schools. When I asked them to take a guess and say how many schools do you think India would have had in the pre-British period, hardly they will say maybe 50 schools, 100 schools. But here is William Adams saying that in Bengal and Bihar alone there were 100,000 schools. And Prendergast was similarly giving a report from Bombay Presidency saying that almost every village has not one school but many schools. Thomas Munro from Madras Presidency was giving a count of about hundreds of colleges running, where thousands of students were studying and specializing in certain subjects. And Leetner from Punjab, in fact, gives a very beautiful report saying that I have never come across an education system where the teachers are exhibiting such a commitment to knowledge for its own sake. They are not doing the job for the sake of money, but there is a great commitment to gaining knowledge and education. So, this is a kind of a compliment that the British officers themselves were giving through these surveys that had been systematically done to the British. But this 1835 minute was a turning point, and from there we see that the ecosystem that was supporting these schools, for example, in Punjab province, as Leitner mentions, that almost every farmer and businessman, their children were studying in these village schools, in these indigenous schools, and therefore a portion of agricultural produce would be given to these schools as donation in charity. So it is, this kind of what you call the societal support which ran these schools, and the teachers never, in fact, had to worry about their where their next meal will come from. Food, clothing, and shelter were not a problem to these teachers, and therefore their minds were free to pursue knowledge. So this support system kind of collapsed because we know that because of their exploitative economic policies, agriculture collapsed in India heavy because of the heavy taxation, and then the looting of the food grains which happened, the food grains which were being transported to Britain during the Second World War alone. We note that Churchill's this transfer of food grains, this looting of food grains led to millions of deaths in Bengal and all over India. Similarly, from 1873 to almost 1903, we had the 30-year period which was called the Bengal famine, which led to millions of deaths again in India. So when the supporting economic system which was supporting these schools collapsed, the schools also kind of disintegrated, and these were replaced by the English medium schools, and we find that literacy and numeracy going down after the introduction of these English medium schools. Now the tragedy comes again. The second part of the tragedy unfolds after independence. That when we became independent in 1947, what should we have done? We should have taken a hard look at the education system and thought about the original vision of our rishis and of our saints and of our great scholars who were there. What was the education system that they wanted India to have? And because we had become independent, we should have decolonized the education system also. By decolonization, I mean that though we became politically independent in 1947, the hangover of the British continues, through the education system in post-independence India. So that had to be decolonized, and you required leadership with that vision. Those who were themselves decolonized only could then understand, how the decolonization of the education system could have been done. So unfortunately, we did not have that kind of visionary leadership, or the leadership made, say, wrong decisions or blunders, which continued this British hangover, this colonial hangover in the education system. And therefore, post independence, you also see that what Macaulay wanted, that he wanted to create interpreters who would govern India on their behalf. And we kept producing, IAS officers, IPS officers, clerks, essentially, not for the British Empire, but clerks with the same anglicized mindset, who did not have an original vision or a Indian worldview in them. So this is what Sanjeev Sanyal in his book Revolutionary says, that those who were in fact sympathetic to the British continued to occupy very positions of great prominence and influence and importance in India in post independence also. And therefore, that change did not come about. So, this is the history of what has happened till now. So, now what you see is that yes.
The numbers that you just specified about how many schools were in which region, in which state, was there truth to it, or was it a false information that was being given?
No, absolutely. You see, the early British administrators were, in fact, very, what to say, sympathetic, and they were admirers of India, Indian culture, India's education, and all the Indian knowledge systems that were there. When you read the early records of these British surveyors or the writings of these British scholars, you find that they were not filled with any kind of excessive prejudice or hate towards, India. But once, of course, they become politically dominant over us, and once almost the whole of India comes under the British rule, then that attitude changes. So these early surveys are therefore very critical because they provide a lot of objective data, unbiased data, and collected by the British themselves, but it paints a very different picture of the education system that existed there.
Interesting. So when we reached independence and when we started moving on after independence, do you think you just specified that the first thing that should have happened was to focus on education system, but that did not happen. However, in a lot of era, right, going forward, political party that was that time then taking over the seat was Congress. Uh, there were a lot of articles that came into play, but they were very biased towards certain religion, probably Muslims or Christians. So where did Hindus come into play, and how did we lose our original scriptures or original Bharatiya Sanskriti in education?
Right. So, in post-independence India, there were two things that affected our decolonization of the Indian education system. One was the partition of India. See, the partition of India left a great scar on the minds of the people, and
Hmm.
therefore, the leadership that existed then wanted to prevent a further escalation of these communal tensions between the Hindus and the Muslims, and therefore, this artificial construct of secularism was, brought into the constitution, right? And the onus of always maintaining the harmony, the communal harmony, rested on what they called the majority. So this whole again Western notion of majority and minority, which did not exist traditionally in our Indian worldview, that those who are in numbers greater, those who are superior in numbers are called the majority, and the majority is always considered as the oppressor, and those who are lesser in number are the minority, and the minority by default are considered as the oppressed. So the onus was always put on the Hindu community to take a back seat to give fair treatment to the minorities. So this whole narrative affected the way we saw the education system also. So any introduction of Indian knowledge systems, of Hinduism, of Ramayana, of Mahabharata, of Bhagavad Gita was seen as controversial because it would hurt the sentiments of the minority communities, and therefore the constitution does not allow what it calls religious instruction through government controlled schools. So this false narrative, this wrong narrative was brought in, which prevented the decolonization of the Indian education system to happen. The other
But
political arrangement, yes,
it still exists even today.
we continue with the same, right? These articles of the constitution have not been amended, right? So that same attitude continues to this day.
So, in the last at least 50 to 60 years, Muslims have continued to teach their people their culture, their traditions, or you go to churches and their traditions and their cultures are continued, but we're the sufferers.
So, Article 26 and 30 of the Indian Constitution explicitly gives this advantage to the minority communities that they can run schools where the religion of the minority community can be imparted to the students, but there is no such provision for the so called majority community in India. So, in
So
fact, one
why?
of the first education ministers of India was Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, right? So, when there were so many great scholars in India, right? So, if, for example, Tirupati Munshiji was there, who founded the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, and his whole focus was on what he called Bharatiya Vidya, that education in India should be rooted in our Bharatiya ethos. If somebody like that had been given charge of education post independence, I think our whole, the last 60, 70 years of the post independence period and the kind of reforms that we would have seen in Indian education would have been completely different.
Different.
Unfortunately, that did not happen.
Very
And also,
true.
now it is a well-known open secret that particularly Indira Gandhi, when she was in power, she had a kind of a quid pro quo with the leftists. She had a arrangement with the leftists that she would appoint them to important positions in the academic institutions, including posts of vice chancellors, etc. And they would in turn help in promoting a narrative of Indian history, which would help the Congress. And therefore, you see that all the education, the textbooks that have been written in the post-independence period, or the history books that have been written, highlight one particular party's contribution to the freedom struggle, and they sideline India's contributions to science, to technology, to culture, to arts, and therefore this is what was taught through the education system, and that stranglehold continues to this day. We have to understand this. There was this famous dialogue in this movie called Kashmir Files, where they say, "Sarkar unki hai, par system hamara hai." तो सिस्टम अब भी उनका ही है. There is no doubt about that. That even today in all the universities and in important educational institutions, the dominance of this old school of thought continues. But there are very clear signs of budding shoots of change that we can see.
So, moving on, before we talk about the change, I think I want the viewers to hear, understand that Article 26 and Article 30 that you just specified are, yes, in a little bit of instigating way, I do want to say this, is supporting only the minorities. And who is the minorities in India, Pramodji?
Uh, that is those who are lesser in number. That is the definition, right? So it refers to the religions like Christianity or Islam or Jainism. Okay, at least with Jainism and Buddhism, you can say that these are religions of Indian origin, right? And we don't have, except for some philosophical differences with them, we have not had a history of conflict, violent conflict with them, like we have had with religions which have come from outside to India.
Right. So Article 26 and Article 30 are supporting these religions because they fall into the minority category. And Hindus of India are apparently majority in numbers, so they are not going to get the benefits of having Indian institutions or education systems or schools that will teach you Mahabharata or Ramayana or your own grantha, for that matter, Vidur Niti, Chanakya Niti. All this are been restricted. I think viewers or listeners, you all need to come back to the state of Jagrut Bharat. And if you want to be a part of eradicating or at least speaking up, that Article 26 and Article 30 should be reviewed, should be revised, and majority, if we are Hindus, that's okay. If we are considered majority, that's fine too. But Hindus also have the right to education system of their own cultures, of their own granth, of their own literatures. If you agree to this, please comment in the below section. We want to continue this agenda. We want to continue this fire that you are feeling right now, just like Pramoji and I are feeling, that this is not fair to a specific caste or specific religion to take away their rights of teaching their own upcoming generation of what they need to learn in a right way. And we know what the left wing is teaching. Otherwise, we would not have what we're seeing around in the world, and we would not have to worry about terrorism or any other ideologies that are being spread, which could maybe a part of their teachings because they have the right to teach their culture. See, rethink,
So,
people.
Meghaji, this is in fact similar to what we discussed in the previous podcast also. For example, the government in India thinks that it is all right to interfere in temple administration they through this body called the HRNC. But again, the minorities are given full freedom to administer their own places of worship, and they're even given financial incentives, from the taxpayers' money. Money goes to these minority places of religion to as salaries, for example, for these Maulanas and Maulvis and mosques, etc. So this is again, similar to that discrimination that we spoke of in the previous podcast. When you are denying a particular community its right to religion, to right to freedom of religion, which includes right to propagate your religion and right to teach your future generations about the fundamentals of your religion, about the concepts of your religion through the schools that you are running. In fact, you would have heard about cases. There were several Hindu institutions in India who were harassed to such an extent by the local state governments that at some point of time they thought of approaching the courts asking for minority status, saying that we are not Hindus, we are also minorities because we are following a particular panth, a particular sect, and therefore we want to declare ourselves as a religious minority. And this was done only because of the kind of targeted harassment against these religious and educational institutions that they were running. So this is the kind of situation that we have seen in the last 70 years.
Pramodji, do you think this also has to do with schedule caste, schedule tribe, SC, BC, PT, all those? When you get these exams for doctors, your exams for engineers, middle class people like me or my family or many like us give their exams and score a really good score, but somebody else who's a lower class for that matter suddenly now gets admissions into places that probably the middle class should have gotten, but because they don't fall under that category, their admissions have been taken away. I'm sure a lot of viewers and listeners are going to relate to this because I've heard this from a lot of people. What is that about? Why is that preference? Just because you
So
don't.
again, you have to understand this again goes back to the history of education that we were talking about, Meghaji. That the data brought out by Dharampalji shows that in the village schools that existed in pre-British India, there was no such discrimination against the lower castes. So this whole narrative has been built by the Britishers and later on, the historians who have followed this colonial narrative, that for thousands of years there was rampant and cruel discrimination against the lower classes, and that they were denied entry to the education system, etc. So the data is available today to show that in these village schools, all communities were represented in these schools, and there was no such discrimination, in fact. And in fact, the discrimination starts during the British period because people like Macaulay wanted to target the intellectual and the cultural elite, and therefore,
Mm,
in the English medium schools which they were starting, they were encouraging, in fact, the intellectual cultural elite, which is the Brahmin community in particular, to join these schools. And therefore, you will see that a large number of people who joined these English medium schools during the British period were also from the Brahmin community. So, from this 1835 inflection point, you see that this jealousy against the Brahmins and against the upper caste increased, because within a
mm,
few generations, many of them, got English educated, and they became ICS officers, and they became very influential and rich officers under the British Empire. And this is, in fact, was the beginning of the serious caste or the community-based conflict. This was the seed of the conflict that we see today, which people like Dr. B.R. Ambedkar tried to reverse or tried to rectify by introducing the concept of reservations in educational institutions. But even Dr. B.R. Ambedkar wanted it only for a limited time period. He wanted it only for about 10 years or 20 years, and he felt that once this initial push was given to those who were suffering, then this could be taken off. But this is the we know that once you give a privilege to somebody, it is very difficult to take it off. It has been politicized to such an extent that nobody dares to talk about removing reservations in jobs or education system, because then it will affect their political prospects. So we are stuck with that system, though there was not even a historical basis, not even any historical accuracy, factual basis to this whole claim that there was discrimination. But still, the reverse discrimination was put in place in the post-independent period, and we continue with that kind of discriminatory atmosphere even today. So sooner or later, we will have to move towards a system that recognizes merit. In fact, even the word merit has been politicized, and there are scholars who will say that it is only the Brahmins who will talk of merit. Merit is similar to karma and punya. This is how they are demonizing even the word merit, by saying that if you talk of a merit based system, you are essentially again discriminating against the oppressed classes, etc. So to this extent, you see, the narrative has been built. But sooner or later, this kind of reverse discrimination cannot continue, and it will have to, the public will have to put pressure to bring about this change, and we have to move towards a truly fair society which recognizes merit wherever it comes from. We are not saying that the state should not facilitate or should not, say, provide incentives to those who deserve it. For
mm.
example, these incentives could be given to those who are economically backward, to all the poor people, whichever community they come from. If they have the qualification, if they have the talent, if they have the knowledge and the skill to do their further higher studies, but they are unable to do it because their families are not financially well off, then in such cases, definitely, it is a good thing if the state subsidizes the education for them, or gives them incentives so that such children can complete their higher education. But it should not be on the basis of religion or caste or community. It should be extended to all equally, irrespective of whatever their religion or caste is. So this is, this should be the future of Indian education.
Very true. And I'm sure everybody here is going to agree with you. How do we implement this? Do you see that changing? Do you see BJP or Modi ji's administration is considering or even working towards that? Is there a change?
One, yeah. So as far as the education system is concerned, so there is a paradigm shift that happened in the year 2020 with the new education policy which has come, right? NEP 2020 as it is called, and there is another document which has been published in 2023, which is the National Curriculum Framework for School Education. That is based on the NEP 2020. So when you read these two documents, you see that a lot of positive changes have been envisioned, and it is already being implemented. If you look at the textbooks that are coming out, which are aligned with the NEP, you will see these positive changes happening. For example, both the NEP 2020 and this NCFSC, 2023, place a lot of emphasis on Indian knowledge systems, Bharatiya Jnana Parampara. So India's contributions to mathematics, to science, to economics, to all the fields is now getting systematically integrated into the textbook. So I think in the post-independence period, this is the first time that such a systematic effort is happening to integrate Indian knowledge systems into these textbooks, which did not happen earlier. So grade 3 and grade 6, for example, textbooks have been, the new textbooks aligned with the NEP have been published this year. And if you look at those textbooks, you will find a lot of positive changes. So I would request your viewers also to go download these textbooks are available on the NCERT website, and you can download them and see the difference with the older textbooks which has been there. So this is really a paradigm shift that is happening, but it takes time. The reason that it takes time is, and here is the problem, that the public is jumping the gun. Even yesterday I was looking at an article in a magazine which somebody had downloaded the 8th standard social science textbook from the NCERT website, and there was a chapter which was anti-Brahminical, which was very negatively portraying again the Brahmin community, following the same narrative as we were talking about, which was there during the British period. So this went viral on social media, and I started getting a lot of WhatsApp messages yesterday night saying, see this, the NCERT 8 standard textbook that is being used in 2025. It has been so many years since Modi ji came to power, since BJP came to power in the center in 2014. Until now, the textbooks have not been changed. So you see, this is factually incorrect, because that 8 standard textbook which was downloaded and shared on social media, it is actually the old textbook which has been reprinted and it is still being used. The reason being that this is a, you see, the textbook writing is it's a, anybody should understand that it is a research intensive process, right? Earlier we have seen, for example, during the Vajpayee era, that when a similar attempt was made to rewrite the textbooks and align them with Bharatiya Jnana Parampara, it led to a lot of unnecessary controversy, because a lot of exaggerations, inaccuracies, etc., got into the textbooks. So this government is far more careful in doing this effort, and they have created committees where they are consulting the best possible experts on Indian knowledge systems. And so it is a time consuming process, and you have to verify, authenticate each and every detail that goes into the textbooks, because this is what is going to be taught to the students, and we want those students to know what is the real history. The authentic history has to be taught to them. So it took them nearly 6 months to produce those two grade 3 and grade 6 textbooks, and this year I think many more of those textbooks are going to be published. So the grade 8 textbook will also change. But what is happening is that a lot of people are jumping the gun. As I said, they'll simply go to the NCERT website, download one of the old textbooks, and they'll take a scan of one of these lessons and put it on the social media and say nothing has changed. Nothing is changing. So to all of them, I would say, please go and download the grade 3, grade 6, especially the grade 6 social science textbook. You can download and see, or even the grade 3, grade 6 mathematics textbooks you can download and see, or the science textbooks, and you will see the difference very, very clearly. So we have to be a little patient, especially when we are talking of a transformation of the education system. Right, this is not something that will happen overnight. And remember that the decline also did not happen overnight. It's when we are dealing with changing the psychology, changing the consciousness, and changing the character of our future generations, the change has to be deep, and the change has to be from within, and it has to be laid on very solid foundations, right? So a lot of scholarly work is required for doing this, and that work is going on. But given the government systems and the processes and the bureaucracy, this is a very slow moving process, and therefore we have to be patient. We have to give them time for this change to happen. So unfair criticism usually will only derail this process. Unfair criticism will only put pressure on them and make them feel demotivated, because they're actually trying to do something good, and you are constantly bringing up the old textbooks and saying that they're not doing anything. So this pitfall we have to avoid. So please do read, I would say to all the viewers, these documents, the NEP document, the NCFSC documents, and the new textbooks which have been published.
When would the other grades change?
I think a few more about, yeah. So I think grade 4, 5, and one more will come out this year. And by next year, I think most of the textbook by next academic year, most of the textbooks will be published. So the target is by the next this year's academic year will start, let's say, in May June for the schools, let's say. So by March April, a few more textbooks will get published, and the remaining throughout the year, as and when they complete the process, the new textbooks will be released. But next academic year, by I think by that is academic year 2026, most of the new textbooks will be in place.
That's been quite a long journey, huh? I
Yeah.
mean, this administration term has been so long. So that's how long it will take for us. I mean,
See,
because
problem is, Meghaji, that see, we want the change to come very quickly, but where are the people to bring about the change? See, for
mm,
example, on our side, where are the qualified academicians, qualified historians, qualified textbook writers, right, who are capable of bringing these quality new textbooks? We have very few people. You can count them on your fingers, right? Whereas on the other side, because their ecosystem has nurtured them for decades together, right? So that is why I said that sarkar unki hai par system hamara hai continues to this day, because they have had a stranglehold on all academic institutions, and all the new scholars who have come out through those educational institutions have been psychologically trained to follow the old school of thought. And this is where our ecosystem has failed, that failed in the sense that we have not given sufficient importance to grooming new scholarship, young scholarship, by giving them what it takes, by giving them the kind of mentorship and support and infrastructure and environment that it takes for producing good quality scholars who would then go on to become, let's say, are these qualified intellectuals and historians and the academicians that we need for bringing about this change. So that is where we need to invest. Not, and it is not just the government's task to do this, right? You can never expect the government to bring about radical changes. This is never going to happen. So it is the whole of the society together that has to think about it. For example, there are a lot of private entrepreneurs, philanthropists, billionaires in India today, right? The count of billionaires is rapidly growing in India, and who I'm referring to, all these billionaires in India, they will end up going giving in charity millions of dollars to Harvard, to Cambridge, and to all foreign universities, instead of nurturing this scholarship, Indian scholarship here. They will not trust any Indian university and give the same amount of money, let's say, in setting up a chair or an endowment that can produce, say, another 100 or 50 PhDs on Indian knowledge systems, right? So this mindset also has to change. There is no dearth of funds today in India on our side, but the vision is lacking, the competency is lacking, the thinking on how we should nurture this future generations of scholarship. I think that is where more thrust has to be given in the days to come.
but don't you think a lot of youth currently in India is going in the pathway of, oh, I can make easy money, faster money? This generation is all about easy, fast, quick, overnight change, overnight
You're right in
results.
a way. Yeah, see, even in the British period, I am reminded of what Swami Vivekananda used to tell the youngsters. So very sarcastically, he would ask them, "Is your highest ambition in life to become a barrister in a British court?" Right. So that is what the youngsters aspired then. And but see, we have to understand the cause for that. Today, what has happened is, in this rat race, Macaulay wanted to create that class of interpreters, brown sahibs. Today we are creating, let's say, software coolies for the multinational software giants. The number of original products, let's say, that the Indian software companies have produced is very little. You take this artificial intelligence debate which is going on today between ChatGPT and DeepSeek. The China has been able to come up with its own alternative, but where is India in this race? Right, India is not even started. We have not even put the seeds for that revolution to happen. Though we have all the brains, the whole of the Silicon Valley, the brain behind it is largely millions of Indian software professionals who are there, but their thrust is always, they're part of a system which is benefiting the multinational software companies, and not in developing India's core capacity, like what China is doing. So This is where we are going wrong, or this is where the thrust has to be in the coming days.
But do you think there is a lack of motivation or a lack of trust in the education system, in the Indian education system, where change will actually occur? Because just like you mentioned, Silicon Valley or even Tesla for that matter, Austin, Texas, there's new Tesla company, and it all the managers are Indians, all of them. So it's very prideful, but also it's very interesting from time to time to just hear that our people are doing amazing work outside of Bharat, but why is there not that motivation for Bharatiya to put that work in India? Like, what do you think is the problem?
So again, it is a mix of this political masala that has been there. That the distrust comes from the fact that an IIT graduate, an IIM graduate will feel that his merit will not be recognized here, right? So that distrust is what is causing what these people have termed as brain drain, etc. But in a way, that brain drain has also in a roundabout way ended up helping India. The success of these people who have gone to the NRIs who have gone abroad has actually brought a good name to India everywhere in the world. So, but the paradigm shift is again happening. The government is also waking up to that. For example, these initiatives like Make in India, right, are a sign of that. There are shoots of change happening in the education system. Also, if you saw the last week, there was a very good report, a very positive report as to how the NEP 2020 has actually helped improve literacy and numeracy amongst the school children in India. That the NEP is bringing about a positive change. This is being corroborated with proper data and surveys that are being done. And therefore, change is happening, but change is always slow, and we'll have to be patient with that. You know.
Do you see a time in life ever in the next probably a decade that India will not be associated with the two major deals, which is poverty and illiteracy? Like they're just stuck to us for years and years. Is that going to go away?
Meghaji, this is mostly narrative only, right? Already we are out of both. Neither India is a poor country anymore, nor are we an illiterate country anymore, right? So there is only some handful of international agencies which keep doing this kind of rankings, which are very biased and not based on proper data, which keep putting these tags on us. And we have to change our mindset also, right? We have to come out of this poverty mindset and start looking at it. We are already the fifth largest economy in the world. In another 5 to 10 years, we'll become the third largest economy in the world. And if we continue to grow, hopefully, if this growth sustains, right, no, we are going to regain our dominant position as it used to be. Like again, historians like Angus Madison have pointed out that from the first century CE to the 16th century CE, India had the highest contribution to the world's GDP. So it shows that when we are left to ourselves, when we are not oppressed by a foreign power, and when there is no foreign interference in our society and in our way of life, by our own very nature, we are hardworking, we are committed to knowledge, we are committed to education, and we rise economically and we rise knowledge wise also. So that process of regaining Bharata's original position has already started, and it is growing by leaps and bounds. And I'm very hopeful for the future. What you say will definitely happen in the decades to come. India will be completely transformed. You will not be able to recognize the kind of changes that will come.
And that's a very proud thing to hear, really. It fills my heart with pride that you see it coming. I think somebody who's an insider knows a lot more than somebody who's on the outside pointing fingers at you saying, hey, why is this not happening versus when will this happen? So it's good to know that it will happen. There is hope, there is faith, and there is trust. Um, Specifically with NCERT, Pramodji, do you think there is something that you can share with us where our trust can embrace or can increase, that
Yeah,
yes, that's truly the change is coming? Can we see something?
sure. I will just show you. One thing is this NEP document I'd like to show you. How do I share? It says upload a file. So I'll just upload that file maybe. And
Or you could send me that file and I can share it.
you could add it in the slides. I'll send you this PPT. And also the grade 3 and the grade 6 textbooks, the slides of the pages where this Indian knowledge system has been integrated. And you will see in the social science textbook, for example, from the Vedas to Buddhism to almost all the Bharatiya paramparas have been highlighted very well. The weightage that they deserve, the sanctity or the respect that they deserve has been given in these textbooks. So if you perhaps put up some of these slides as part of the podcast, I'm sure that your viewers will also get a very rounded view. They will get an objective view of the kind of change that is happening, and they will also feel comforted that this is happening. And surely by next year, when all the textbooks come out, I'm sure that the very same people who are jumping the gun today, as I said, right, who are coming to this conclusion that nothing has changed, they will change their whole review or their evaluation, and they will be happy with the new textbooks that will come out.
Amazing. Last time during our Hindu Renaissance podcast, when I introduced you as one of the consultants with NCERT, I had a lot of people already send me messages about, hey, can you ask him more about education? Can you ask him where this is going? And now that we've done this, I'm sure they have a lot more follow up questions. Whatever comes my way, I am going to send it to you if we need to do another podcast just to answer those questions if we could. I think they'll
Sure.
truly appreciate it. Uh, Viewers, as you are aware, Pramodji is here to clarify your doubts or your concerns about the education system, but at the same time, he is loudly and proudly also saying that let's have faith and let's have patience. In due time, things are coming the way we deserve, the way we want, and the way we all have envisioned Bharat to be in the upcoming years. But don't forget, Article 26 and Article 30, put that in your mind. We have to change that as a collaborative effort, all of us. Pramodji, can you be our chief and leader
Absolutely.
and cheerleader for that?
Sure. In fact, Megaji, we could even review the grade 6 social science textbook if you want. I'll send it across to you, the PDF file. In the next podcast, we could take chapter by chapter and look at the content in it and do a small podcast on it if it helps your viewers to get a better picture of the kind of work that is being done.
That's fantastic. I think hearing from the horse's mouth is what they say. You just heard Pramodji. He's given out so many details. I don't know, Pramodji, if this puts you in any sort of tough position or situation of how much you could tell us. But I truly, truly appreciate that you've been so honest and you have hope and the vision that this is getting better. And it's just a nice thing to know that India is really going to grow for what it needs to be. Like Bharat will see the change.
Right.
Yes, I would love to do the podcast and whatever questions you guys want to send my way before our next podcast with Pramodji, I will send it to him. You guys will get your answers or whatever you're needing as clarification from Pramodji. And just know he's not fearless, he's not fearful. So whatever type of questions come to your mind, just feel free to send it our way and it will reach to Pramodji. So we all promise to you that we will come up with a brand new podcast that will give you or show you for that matter a variance of the sixth grade textbook. Pramodji, is that what we're going to
Yes,
show you?
grade 6 we could do.
Okay. And we
Absolutely.
will show you what was it and what has now changed and what new content has come our way. Um, Again, keep your trust, keep your faith, and keep your patience. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
much,
Yes.
Pramodji, one more time.
Absolutely.
We
My
truly,
pleasure.
truly, yes, we truly appreciate your time. We truly appreciate your efforts and keep continuing doing phenomenal work for Bharat.
Thank you so much again. Thank you for hosting me. Namaste.
Namaste. Jai Shri Ram. My viewers and listeners, we will be right with you soon. Jai Shri Ram.